Hey there. Good morning and almost afternoon. So I'm going live just to kind of get it up on the channel a little bit quicker. It's almost my lunch hour, so I don't have time to sit and edit it too much. So short and sweet, I'll get to the main point. If any of you catch it later on, you're going to kind of hear about this a little bit as well. Now, I do fully understand the timing. I know what day it is. It's April the 1st. But one thing that I'll quickly state is that given the date that it is, and given the reality of the way the sports card grading landscape is, if this is an April Fool's joke, and I don't believe it is, for a couple of reasons that I'll quickly outline, it is probably the worst conceived one in history. So I will include the caveat where if it turns out it is an April Fool's joke, I'll make an update on it. But either way, then it's just another misstep. So quickly, short and sweet, SGC has raised its base grading price to $75 per card. And quickly, I'll show you. I'll do a quick screen share. This is not going to be a very long video, and I know it's a live stream, but if nobody sees it, that's perfectly fine. I'm not worried about that. But I'll quickly show you kind of what it looks like here. And if anyone does pop in, I'm not going to spend too much time. If there's some comments or something, I'll quickly address it, but we'll kind of zip through this quickly. So this is the SGC website. So right now on the website itself, you can see the usual information, but here it says starting at $75 per card, which is a huge bump up from their previous pricing. So the update here is where they say, I'll actually read you a chunk of this. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. I'll read you a chunk of this, but before that, I quickly want to say the reason why I'm kind of inclined to not believe it's an April Fool's joke is that back in earlier in March, they already stated when they were talking about the backlog, they talked about specifically, and I'll try to include a link to the March update as well. And in the March update, when they were bragging about decreasing the backlog, they said they left the caveat where if they got overwhelmed again, they would be willing to raise the price. So I'll go back to this. Sorry, I know it didn't switch screens, but I'll stick to this one here. So I'll quickly read through it, and it will mention the part that I was talking about. So as you know, the demand for card grading is higher than it's ever been. Although it's totally unrealistic, only a few years ago, the entire world has officially taken notice of the trading card explosion, and more have jumped into this hobby than anyone could have imagined. I'm not going to read every word of it, but I'll skip through it. So quickly as I go through it. For those of you who haven't already heard, our turnaround time is unbelievable right now. The question I always ask myself is, should it be? Is turning around an order of 8 Panini Prism cards in 2 weeks really that impressive? Well, in this industry it is. That is what we have set out to change. Usual promises. But anyway, so SGC way of doing things, providing the service you deserve, is not threatened by the recent shutdown of our competitor. In fact, it emboldens everything we've been. So a lot of it's marketing speak. I understand that, but I quickly want to zip through. I want to tip my cap to our competitor for making the hard decision that we have faced back in October of 2020. So I'll zip through here. As I mentioned in my previous update, SGC refuses to compromise the service that we've worked so hard to provide. That means we will not take in more cards than we're able to process. Over the past 24 hours, the number of cards submitted to SGC for grading has increased by over 500%. Now, if you remember, in previous live streams and things like that, and also in the video I made this week when PSA said it was going to stop taking submissions for all but the absolute highest tiers, I mentioned there was a real likelihood. You know, the idea was, oh, we're just going to jump to the competitor. Well, if a lot of people do that, they're going to get overwhelmed. And it was one of those things where I suspected it wouldn't take long for us to see if they were actually prepared to ramp up to that level. I also mentioned that SGC had already stated themselves in the previous update that they were ready to make that move. They were prepared to bump up the price if need be. And it looks like they have executed that based on what they've said previously. I can see a couple of comments here, so I'll get to them right at the end, but let me quickly zip through this here. So with that being said, effective immediately, SGC is increasing our base rate from $25 a card to $75 a card, so tripling the price. We understand this is a significant price hike, but it's absolutely necessary due to the decision our competitors made, meaning PSA. Our entire team cares about how you're feeling, and this means that we'll be pricing out a large group of cards. Please understand this is temporary and will continue to build at an unmatched rate. So like I said, they weren't ready for it, and then they had to bump up their price in order to basically stave off demand, to kind of slow people down in the same way. So although I can't pinpoint exactly when it will take place, SGC will be lowering our prices as soon as we feel we can effectively meet the demand. Until then, we'll continue to grow this amazing team, blah, 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 blah. So Peter Steinberg, President SGC. So not shocking, not surprising. We knew the likelihood was this was going to happen, but it was fun for me to watch videos and different channels and things talk about what you expected. They said, oh, well, you know, SGC is going to take over as number 2, or, you know, CSG is going to take over as number 2. So SGC is the first one to kind of show. Again, I know what day it is. I know it's April the 1st. But if that's an April Fool's joke, it's a very dumb one, because they had already laid the groundwork back in March that the possibility was in play to be able to go up in price. So I want to make sure that's clear. I understand what day of the week it is, but I think given the realities that when PSA basically shuttered most of the grading tiers and left only the absolute highest, the likelihood was some people were going to run to SGC, probably some are going to run to BGS, probably some are going to run to SGC. HGA is already locked up because they have a limit. So it's not going to work. So these other competitors were not in a position to be able to meet the demand and take all of that influx. We knew that likelihood, at least some of us knew that likelihood was the case. When PSA said they were taking in 500,000 cards intake per business week, nobody else was in a position to absorb that kind of volume and be able to get cards out fast enough to be able to do anything about it. SGC is just acknowledging that and then raising their prices accordingly. So real quick, I'll just grab the comments. So Bobby, yep, absolutely. So Boston Kid here, thank you for popping in. The analogy I used recently is the card community used to be like a favorite vacation spot. Yep. Fair enough. Sounds reasonable. Yeah. So they saying they can't take on 500,000 cards per week. Yeah, exactly. Which is not shocking. There's nothing shocking about that. I'm not surprised and I don't blame them. And the thing is, there shouldn't be a shock factor for anybody because SGC explicitly said, if we start getting slammed again, we will raise the price. They said it. They said it back at the beginning of March. So they're just going through with what they said they were going to do. At least I'll give them credit for doing it quickly. It didn't take them long. PSA said they were no go. And just to be clear though, PSA is not shut down. If you want to pay $300 a card, they're working perfectly fine. If you want to pay over $300 a card, you can still submit your stuff, or $600 a card or whatever the case is for Super Express. But it's a no-go for anything else in that category. But that's how it's going to be. As far as SGC though, I don't blame them for doing this because there was no way they were going to be able to meet that volume. There was no shot, no chance. And it's probably smarter for them to not try because they don't want to get stuck in the backlog thing because they went through social media making fun of backlogs. The worst thing for them would be to end up with a backlog. So bumping up this price is basically trying to avoid that right now before it gets out of hand. So quickly, I'll grab one or two more comments here. Boston Kid said, won't be in the National this year. My $600 more of the purchasing power it had back in 2019. Yeah. Well, Boston Kid, we'll still see because I can tell you, I saw that the Chicago Sports Spectacular has been canceled for the one that would have been in June. They've already canceled it. So now that's starting to creep into because the National is at the end of July, the beginning of August. So if the Chicago Sports National in Chicago is canceled for June, it's starting to creep closer and closer and closer to National. So they may not have a National. Again, that's still, we still got some time to figure out what's going to happen with that. But if the show in June's not going to go off, the end of July is not that far past it. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. Yeah. And then Beckett's going to be the next shoe to drop if they announce something. Mind you, Beckett is kind of slow in announcing things. It wouldn't shock me if Beckett just praises prices on their site and doesn't tell anybody, and then people just notice it. But they're the other one, right? But they've also had their own backlog problems and their own issues and things like that. So they were already in that position. SGC was the one who bragged about closing off their backlog. So they were the ones who bragged about being in the best position to be able to accept more volume. But then immediately they got hit. Nobody is prepared for the type of volume that a lot of these base cards are filling in because it's not Michael Jordan rookies and Gretzky rookies and things like that are eating up this volume and space. It's, Prism base cards. And Prism basketball has just come out, or it's coming out this week. And not surprisingly, there's a lot of potential grading candidates there where somebody kept the price low that they were going to get stuffed with a bunch of, how many LaMelo Ball rookies do you want? That's really what it comes down to. So that's the short version, short and sweet. It is basically this in a nutshell. Not shocking. It's kind of what we expected. So I just wanted to make sure I get out the video. I did it as a live just so that I don't have to edit it. So if I make any mistakes or anything, apologies, but that's how it's going to be. Any last second comments? Because I'm gonna log off this thing. It's not a full-fledged live stream. We're going to talk about it more on Friday. So the Friday live stream will be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you're on my Instagram, you will get the little notification there, and the link is already on my Instagram in the bio. So you can already click on that, and you'll see when that's on there. So any last second things, I'll leave it here for just a couple more seconds, and then if not, we'll log this thing off. So last thing for anybody who pops in, thanks for popping in and checking it out. Any comments? Appreciate you, Dr. Exclusive, Boston Kid, Bobby, of course. Yeah, go raw cards. The thing is, you could have had your raw cards before. So if you just want raw cards, it's not going to change anything. But if they're expensive cards, there's a lot of folks, especially vintage, who aren't going to be comfortable buying raw cards. Just because grading has become more expensive doesn't mean they're going to run to raw cards, because the amount of alterations and things that can happen make it very uncomfortable. Just bear that in mind. For certain cards, it's still not going to be very comfortable unless you can handle it in person. Yeah, I think 2021 is going to be another interesting year. There's a lot of things happening. So I'll leave that as the last word. So like I said, Friday, we'll definitely talk about this. We'll talk about the PSA thing. We'll talk about we may talk about COMC a little bit. There's going to be some other topics. So we'll leave it at all that. Thanks to those of you who popped on to hang out for a couple of minutes here, just as I did a little live stream, just to get this out there. So there it is. SGC has raised its base price to $75 a card. We'll have more to talk about it on the channel in the coming days, and then on the live stream on Friday, and then maybe on Sunday as well. So Friday will be 9:30 Eastern time. That's when we'll do it and get started. And I'll invite some people to come on, and we'll definitely chat about it some more. Anyway, thanks to those of you who popped on. We'll catch you in the